Welcome to another episode of Challenging the Norm. Here's an hers look at life and business with your hosts, Paul Snell and myself, Lindsay Burden. The podcast for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners that want to experience success in their own way. Wrestling with the topics that matter and reality checking the latest trends in business. Paul works with business owners, showing them how they can take the stress out of transforming teams into performance powerhouses that love what they do, while I offer business coaching that empowers ambitious women in business to create financial abundance and a time-rich lifestyle without sacrificing their joy.
Hello, Lindsay. Another episode. So good to be doing this. So good. And I'm going to tell everybody, we probably spent the last 45 minutes as a preamble for this one. So we probably could have recorded that and done a great episode. But nonetheless, we were going to start with what's not your why. We thought that's a great example of where we could go with the podcast. But now we sort of shifted a bit, and we're going to talk about what if your why becomes a problem?
Yes. And I don't think that's actually ever happened before, where we've gone, here's our title, here's what we're bringing to the table, although you were the one bringing everything to the table on this particular podcast. I won't bore with everyone with why my head wasn't in it. But yeah, I don't think we've ever then come sort of round and gone, hang on a minute, I'm not sure where we need to be. But the original idea and concept around this, what is not your why, I think was coming, Paul, from the fact that we know it can be really challenging for people to discover their why. And you came to the core with a fabulous list of things that, people feel their why should be or use as their why. And for me, it's in exploring those things that has brought us round to, I was going to say, does a why become a problem? Can a why become a problem? What happens when it does become a problem? But yeah, the preamble was good today, Paul.
Preamble was excellent. And just to give that some meat, the idea that whys aren't usually things like externally motivated money, they're not titles, they're not even goals and objectives, right? Then they tend not to be specifically task driven. And that's all well and good. And we had a nice little list of those, and it might have been quite a short podcast. Because
in hindsight, it would have been a short podcast.
We'd have done by now. That would have been amazing in less than a minute. But we moved to this because the journey of our conversation, which is maybe worth explaining, was to go from this place where you and I had sometimes differing views of what not was a why, and then started discussing the idea, because we moved in a direction of, because it's not a why, does it become a problem? And what if the why becomes a problem? And can it become a problem? And that's really where we got to the meat of this. We spoke about the fact that whys are designed to inspire and to drive forward, right? And we spoke about some famous people that may have a very, very strong why, the Elon Musks of this world, who are incredibly passionate about what they do. And on the face of it can look really successful, albeit questionable relationship challenges for Elon Musk. And then we're going, but at what expense is okay? Is your why okay? At what point do you go, oh no, this is too expensive, this why? This is too much of a problem for my life.
And I think it goes, there's a step almost before that for me, and that's this need to have a why. I must have a why. I can't possibly have a business without a why, and then when you start exploring whys for the business, suddenly you think, oh, I need a why in life.
Yeah.
Or can they be the same thing? And we go down this route of trying to establish our why. And I think that in itself can be a problem. And I was saying to you that I read that well-known book, Why. Well, I haven't read it. I started it about a year ago. And I just felt totally inadequate. I just felt like my why was never going to be big enough. It was never going to be powerful enough. And we were talking before we hit record around, that often those really strong whys come from an event, come
Mm.
from something that has happened and that we become passionate about. And, and I was saying, my why, my why, well, how can that come out of something that's quite a
Mm.
boring normal life? So I think there is this issue. I think there's lots around why. There is a real challenge in what is a why we need it, and the importance of it in our businesses, which can then lead to real feelings of inadequacy. And when we get to that point, in comes imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough and I'm never going to be able to do this. And it just feels that while there is a role and benefit,
Yeah.
it can be really challenging. So I think there is that piece around this. And then when you're struggling to work out your why, you might start to read some fabulous autobiographies and hear about people risking everything. And then you start questioning yourself of, could I really risk my home? Could I risk losing the roof over my head? And then that takes you back to not feeling good enough again.
It does. And I think there's an additional dimension which you've touched on, and that is whenever we read these books or see stuff on social media or listen to things, more often than not, they are the exception. So, the Richard Bransons of this world, the Peter Jones of this world, you hear the stories of how, well, they won 1 million, lost 1 million, ended up homeless, now have got everything. They are exceptional, an exception as a context. And of course, for the most of us, it's not that. It's not that massive, huge thing, the Greta Thunbergs of this world. It's and all credit to people who have massive whys.
Yeah.
All credit to them. But that's not the majority. And of course, we care about these people that want to start a business. Just, they sit there and go, I just want to do this, out of my bedroom. I just want to start. Uh, I'm not convinced they need a why that's going to change the world.
No, and actually, change the world isn't, I'm all excited now, isn't a phrase or words that we use, but that's what we're talking about in context of these bigger whys, is that often they are to change the world.
Mm.
And that feels huge and wonderful and fantastic. But coming back to when why becomes a problem, just thinking about some of the activists that we have seen recently, those that thought it was okay to throw orange paint all over Stonehenge,
Mm-hmm.
those who have sat in the middle of motorways and brought the whole of the UK, I don't think they brought the whole of the UK, but brought the M25 to a standstill. I admire that they are passionate about this, but I'm not sure taking it to that level has done them any favors. I'm certainly not going to say, well done you, that was great. Stonehenge may never ever recover from what they did recently here. So I think that's when, for me, if you think about activists, I think that why, that passion can get out of control. It can go to a level where the rest of us go, well, I'm not sure that was a good idea. And then I think you lose the support of those that you need and want.
So you're right. Great example. So now we're moving to a situation that goes, if, and it's all ifs now, right? We're getting to ifs. If our why, no, let's change that. Is it okay if our why becomes a problem for someone else?
I think there's two parts, isn't there? Is it okay when a why becomes a problem to
Yeah,
ourselves?
yeah,
And is it okay if our why then becomes a problem to others? And that's suddenly where you're into a whole different sort of ball game of trying to understand it, which is why this topic is so important and
yeah.
it's so, almost controversial in many ways. Because if the why, just thinking about, the activists and the examples I've given, some might say, well, actually, I'm okay with not getting to my destination. you know, if you're a lorry driver trying to deliver food, you know, suddenly you're not just impacting people to make a statement, you're impacting people's lives and livelihoods.